Good afternoon, podcast community. It is a pleasure. We're here Friday afternoon before the weekend. We're going to bring a very special podcast. So, Harley and I ran into each other. We were in the same Rotary Club, but we talked for a few minutes at McKenna Farms and find out we're both podcasters and we're both
Yes.
coaches. We're going, holy mackerel, we got to get together. So, Harley, tell our viewers who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Okay, so who am I? My name is Harli G, and I am a podcaster as well as a certified coach.
Mhm.
I'm actually coming from the HR industry. So I've been in that industry for about 16 years. So it just kind of it was a natural transition, just having being in that world, coaching leaders day in
Mhm.
and day out, like informally. And then I decided a couple of years ago that the next evolution of Harley G would be to get my coaching certification. But and I'll get into the story about podcasting, but
Mhm.
podcasting is also what I do. And who I serve is I am actually a purpose cultivator. That is what I do. That is my calling, that is my purpose. And so I love to help individuals discover what their ultimate purpose is, cultivate that purpose, and meeting them wherever they are on that journey to purpose. So whether they know it, whether they're like, okay, I'm in it and I know I need to evolve, whether they're evolving, wherever they are on that journey, I like to come in and I help cultivate that. So I am the purpose cultivator. That is who I am.
I love it. And I don't know if you were at our Rotary, but Tommy Stoner, that was the Army Ranger. Were you
Mhm.
that particular one?
No, I don't think I
Subscribe
was.
for month. So anyway, this was a discuss. I had no idea. So I was part of their fundraiser that they did, and I interviewed Christina,
Mhm.
before that, and so she just rocked it. But anyway, fast forward, he's coming to speak to our Rotary, and he's speaking on behalf of helping our veterans transition at the highest level because like Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, they're trained at a high level.
Absolutely.
So they transition into civilian life. It's like they're not going to be a security guard for a
No.
company. They're going to
Right.
have a high level of responsibility. And
Mhm.
so he said something, and I want you to comment on it. He said, everybody says that we have, I don't know the exact number, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 suicides a day from our veteran community. And it breaks your heart that people that serve will end their life like that. But he said lots of people think it's because of PTSD, which
Mhm.
that's part of it. But the main reason is they lack purpose. You
Mhm.
get in there, you're in the military, you're doing what serving the country, you're doing all this, you have purpose, then you get out and it's like, what do I do now?
What do I do? Exactly.
So talk to our viewers about the importance for somebody to discover that purpose.
Oh my gosh. Well, I my faith is my foundation. So I just want to start with that.
Mhm. Yep.
And what happens is, okay, so and it's part of my story. But when
Mhm.
I was, ever since I can remember, I always ask myself, what am I here for? Like, God, I feel like you've created me for a purpose. What is that purpose? I feel like I was kind of going through life, but I wasn't actually living life.
Mhm.
And I had fast forward to I'm an adult and I'm still asking myself that question. And I had the nice job. I had the beautiful children. I had the amazing husband. I had the great job that was paid in the nice house. I had all those things.
Mhm.
But all those, even having all those things, something was still missing. And it wasn't until I discovered my purpose, that
Mhm.
it wasn't until I honed in on my core values, that it's almost kind of like the glue that holds it all together.
Hmm.
Yes, I was meant to be a wife. Yes, I was meant to be a daughter. Yes, I was meant to be a colleague. All of those things, right? But all those roles are tied together by your ultimate purpose. Because once you know that purpose and you know those core values, that literally translates to everything that you do.
Hmm.
Purpose isn't something that you do, but purpose is actually who you are. So it's almost kind of like a piece of your identity is missing until you find that ultimate purpose.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Where in that journey, so you're in that discovery of who you are, your purpose. Did you venture into podcasting as a way to kind of exercise that, to
Yes.
self-aware? Tell us a little bit of how that story happened.
Yes. So again, like I just mentioned, I grew up always asking myself, every once in a while, I would ask myself, okay, what is my ultimate purpose? And I kept asking myself that question. And whenever I would pause and I think about it, it became very overwhelming for me. It was just like, well, where do I even start? And I begin to believe that finding your ultimate purpose, people only did that if they were lucky. Like, if you think about it, imagine if Oprah was doing anything other than what she is doing now.
Yeah, yeah,
You can't, right? You
no,
can't. Imagine if Tyler Perry wasn't who he is now. You'd be like, that doesn't even make sense, Harley.
mhm,
Okay. It doesn't make sense. So when I saw those people and I saw them actively walking in their purpose, I just thought purpose was something that a few lucky individuals could get to.
yeah,
And I would just take a step back and drop it. Fast forward to the pandemic. Um, as you may know, I'm maybe a little bit of an extrovert. And fast forward to the pandemic, and now the world was still. Now we were quarantined. Now we were in isolation. So I had to be a mother. I had to be a teacher. I had to be a wife. I had to be a co-worker, all from the confinement of these four walls right here. And as a result of that, I started having mental breakdowns because I could no longer go out, interact, engage,
mhm,
which is very much part of me. And after that happened multiple times, I was praying one day and I was like, okay, God, what is going on? Because this is obviously not normal. Like, what do I do? And he was like, Harley, I literally stopped the world. You have nothing else to do. Now's the time for you to figure it out.
hmm,
And I was like, wow. Because he knew that if I wasn't forced to pause, if I wasn't forced
yeah,
to sit down, I
yeah,
wouldn't do it. And I was like, okay. So I started think I had this manager that I worked with at the time at work. And we were going through he was interviewing to fill a few roles in his organization.
hmm,
And he always asked one specific question at the end of the interview.
hmm,
That question was, Mr. Pete, you are here today applying for this job. Clearly, you've gotten this far along the process. So we know that you're a hard worker. We know that you're a team worker. We know that you communicate. We know all those things, right? Those things that are obvious. What we want you to tell us is what is it unique about Pete Kane that no one else brings to the table?
ooh, wow, that is good.
Isn't it though? And
Yeah,
I was just like,
it gets
and
down to the core of who you are.
exactly. And
Yes.
I was just like, I would be on pins and needle, like waiting for the candidates to answer. Like the whole interview, I was like, I can't wait for that last question. I can't wait. I can't wait. And um, and after a while, I was like, well, if he asked me that question, how would I answer it? I had no answer. I didn't know. And I was like, okay. So um I kind of paused for a minute. I sat in it, and the very first thing that came to me was passion. And I was like, There is absolutely no way. People are passionate about what they're passionate about, but the passion that I bring in when I walk into a room, the energy that I bring along with me when I
Yeah,
walk into the room is unmatched.
yeah,
And so right then and there, I had discovered my first two core values, passion and energy. In talking to individuals, I've always heard people describe me as Harley is that networker. Harley is that bubbly person. Harley is that person that can go into a networking setting and she knows no stranger. And I was like,
yes.
okay, so why is that? Why is it that I can go into these settings and I feel so comfortable? Like I can strike a conversation with anyone. I want to. It's not like
Mhm.
forced
Yep.
connection.
Yes.
I found that I starve for connection just like somebody else wants water and bread. I
Yes.
need to have connection around me, with me. Like I need to have connection. It is part of who I am. No matter who you are, where you come from, what your background is, I want to know your story. And then influence is my last core value, is because I want to be able to use passion, energy, connection, and influence positively.
Yep.
And those were that's how I became to discover my core values. So once I had those core values, I was like, I want to do something that's going to allow me to walk in those core values. Like
Mhm.
when I do this thing, whatever this thing is, this purpose, this will involve all of my core values. And I thought, I love to hear people's stories. I love to connect with individuals and hear about who they are, what they do. And I want to be able to help people who are on that journey to purpose but don't know how to maneuver through it.
Yes.
And I was like, well, what if I did a podcast that will allow individuals to come on this podcast, this platform, and share their journey to purpose? Because what
Yep.
happens is when someone shares their testimony, it tells somebody else that they're not alone.
Yep.
It lets somebody else know that, listen, we do not have it all figured out. It gives somebody else hope and motivation and inspiration. And so this is how we're able to motivate, uplift, and support one another as we walk on that journey to purpose. And so depending on who the person is, they may be at the same point or point that you're aspiring to be on your purpose journey. You just don't know until you hear their story. And so I figured, I was like, okay, how do I do this? And just went out there and I said, you know what? I'm not going to let the fact that I don't know what I'm doing stop me. I'm going to start. I'll figure it out along the way. And hopefully, what will happen is that my listeners will come on that journey with me. And I have now been podcasting for 2 years.
Wow. I love that. And when you say that, the passion and connection and the curiosity, because the one thing that we have as podcasters is we get to hear stories. We get
Yes.
to discover. And I tell you, I'll talk to somebody and they'll say, I don't have a very interesting story. And I say, who's making that decision? Is that you?
Exactly.
Or is it people that can hear your story?
Yes.
And we think we see life through our own eyes, but
Hmm.
others see it through. And I like how you say extrovert because obviously you are. But I realized that, see, when I had a stroke, I was like in Shepherd for 39 days. And I have met 74 people and I know most of their stories. And
Yes.
so that kind of got me through just the people connection, but I'm
Hmm.
actually a combination of an introvert and an extrovert. I have to
Okay.
charge my batteries,
Yes.
but I'm just like, once the batteries are charged, I want to get out there. But in podcasting, you have that ability to
Yes.
just turn on the camera and
Yes.
you're connected. And so
Mhm.
living in a senior home facility. I didn't expect to be, the average age 80. So if it wasn't for my podcasting and connecting with other people, not just seniors, but vendors and different people that touch the senior, and the senior stories are wonderful. What do you say, like, okay, let's go back to the first year of your podcasting,
Mm-hmm.
first couple months? Because a lot of people say, I don't know where to start. So
Yeah.
where did you start? Like, will you give our viewers an idea of what that first month or two was like?
It, I think all of it was probably for the first 3, 4 months. It was all learning. And it was so with all of that, actually, I actually followed someone recommended a podcaster to me, and he is very well known in the African American community, and he's known as the person who like helps you. He really speaks to people that are inspiring to become podcasters.
Mm-hmm.
And crazy enough is at the time I decided, okay, I'm going to do this, and I have no idea where to start. What am I going to do? Literally, I started following him on Facebook. Pete, I want to say within a couple of days, he put out there that he was going to sell his podcast playbook for $39.99.
Hmm.
And this was all about um, how to get started with a podcast. It was like the simple way, it was like 10 easy steps or whatever it was on how to start a podcast. And he was like, it's not complicated. Start out small, build your way up. And that's literally the message that I heard. And one thing that he made sure to to say was be consistent. So those were the takeaways that I took from him. It was like, okay, I'm going to start. I'm going to start out simple and small, and I'm going to be consistent. So that was the commitment that I made to myself when I started. I already had the laptop, and so I actually pulled on my resources. I knew someone who is very knowledgeable about different equipment because he works in and out of studios.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to put some stuff in my Amazon account. I'm going to reach out to him. I'm going to have him kind of check off my list to see if this decent equipment. I don't need the most expensive stuff. And he kind of did that. He was like, put this in, take that out. That's good, whatever. And within a couple of months, I was up and running. And my goal was to drop an episode every single week. And I said, that's what I'm doing. I'm committing the first year to dropping an episode every single week. And I have 4 kids, and they're involved in track and football. And I was still working my 9 to 5 at the time. So really the only day that I had to record was Saturday. And between extracurricular activities, I had to be very intentional about how I made that happen. Sunday's family day, so that's off limits. And so what I did was there were Saturdays where I booked 3 guests at a time, 3 guests coming in and out, because I wanted to make sure that I had no excuses. So if by happenstance this week I can't get to recording, well, I already had a few episodes in the pipeline that I could drop in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got through the first year of to be consistent. And I made it to the first year, and I love that my listeners were able to kind of see me on that journey. They were able to see me consistently. And then after the first year, I started talking to my business manager, and we were talking about how do I continue to evolve this podcast. And that's when we decided to try out a new format, which was series. And so now, season 2, and then now we're in the middle of season 3, there's series. And so the package is such that we pick a subject, and then within that subject, we bring on people to talk about that subject. And what I love about it is that you get to hear so many different perspectives pertaining to it, right? So right now, season 3, the series about purpose and faith. So we're having guests come on and share their journey to purpose, but how faith is at the foundation, and
Mhm.
share their stories and experiences of being tested in your purpose, being tested in your faith, how those two intertwine, how one helps the other, how you just all of those conversations. And that's how I begin to evolve. But that's how, kind of how I got started. Pete, the first few episodes, they were sound issues. One episode, because I would record with one thing and then I would record audio with one thing and then record video because I knew that I eventually wanted to have a YouTube channel as well. I was in the middle of an episode and I completely forgot to turn on the video.
Mhm.
I mean, I was like,
Yeah.
but those are things that you
Yes,
learn as you go. You
absolutely.
just learn those things. And now that I think about, I mean, I thought it was going to be the end of the world. And now I can go back and look at it and laugh. But those are things that you just kind of learn.
Yeah.
And the biggest lessons out of all of that is giving myself grace.
Yeah, I love that. I had it. It was funny because I have a person at the bank, and he's a wonderful guy. He has a ministry like Cartoons for Christ, and
Oh,
so he's always talking to everybody. Tony
uh-huh.
is like knows everybody, so he is probably. There's been about 25 people that he's referred to me, and there's a common theme with everybody he refers. There are always people of faith or
Uh-huh.
tied in, and so he's always talking about the different things. But the one thing that's super cool is he had his pastor on, and it's funny because I was doing golf before I did this, and the secretary calls says, Pastor Keith doesn't play golf. And no, that's just old Pete. That's not me.
Yes,
I
that's
said,
OP.
I just want to hear his story. And Tony thought that he would be a good guest. Well, anyway, we were talking about the tension just out there in the marketplace. And he said, I said, what do you make of all this? What's through your eyes as a pastor? He goes, if we just give each other grace, like
Mm-hmm.
we're not all robots, we don't all think alike.
Mm-mm.
It's just, but give the person grace that they have an opinion about something. You don't have to agree with everything, but you have to respect where people are coming from.
Yes.
You give them grace, then you're not so divided in your
Mm-hmm.
thinking. Like, oh, you don't believe in this? Oh gosh, I don't want to talk.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
it's like, and so I love that word grace. You said, I want to ask you a question because at the beginning when you were explaining it, you said that you invested, because I'm a big proponent of investing in our abilities. So you took a chance and you
Mm-hmm.
invested in a person playbook. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a playbook. I mean,
Yes.
the person's developed years of his knowledge and
Yes.
expertise, and you said, "Okay, I'm going to invest in it." So tell our viewers, like, how important is it to invest in ourselves? Give
Oh my
us your
gosh.
version or your thoughts on that topic.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like I do that every day, Pete. Now that I'm full time entrepreneur, every day what I do is I invest in myself. Every day I bet on myself. When I wake up and whatever it is that I'm doing, it's so important because the reason why it's so important is because you're going to have those days where you just like, I kind of joke and I say I wake up every day and I quit. Like first thing I do when I open my eyes is I quit, right? And then it's like, and then I pray and I meditate and I'm like, okay, well, no, I'm investing in myself here. So every day, if you're not able to bet on yourself, then how are you going to be able to make it through those days that are just so hard, so challenging? The days that are telling you, yes, this is the day you need to quit. Well, if you're not vested in yourself, you'll listen to that voice and you will quit,
Yes.
right? And this is a journey. This is not, it's not a destination, it's a journey.
Mhm.
So it's going to take all of those days. It's going to take the days that feel like failures, and it's going to take the days that feel like victories. It's going to take all of them to get you through this journey. And so this is why you, at the end of the day, you have to be your biggest cheerleader. You have to be your biggest supporter. And that was actually a challenge for me because I'm so used to, even in my field and what I did in corporate, which was HR, I'm so used to outpouring and pouring into people, and that just became like a second nature for me. That when it was time to do it for myself, I was a little clunky with it. It was a little bit of a, well, how do I do that? Because I was so used to outpouring. And so betting on yourself means that you are yourself's biggest, you are your biggest cheerleader. You are pouring into yourself, because if you don't have anything in, how can you pour out, right?
Yeah. Oh,
So it was so important, especially as an entrepreneur, because
yeah.
it's all on you. You are everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Until
You
you
look yourself
scale,
in the
you
mirror
are
and it's
everything.
like, I got to do it today. And it's like,
Exactly.
you don't have a tag team where you can tag somebody.
No.
Hey, you take my place today.
Yes.
What
Exactly.
would you say to our viewers? Like, what is your biggest failure in those 2 years on your journey? And how did you handle that thing? Can you think back?
You know, I think my biggest, there probably are a couple of lessons here that I feel like I'm actually learning right now, actually. I
Mm-hmm.
think that at the beginning, or as I've done this for the past couple of years, I've been in corporate. So I always had that cushion, that thing to fall back on. And then as of March, I left corporate. I decided I was going to do this full time. And so I feel like just figuring out this entrepreneur journey, I failed multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
I have, but it's it's when I start relying on my own will, and when I feel like I'm in control, that is when I fail.
Yes.
And then God kind of comes along, taps me on the shoulder, and he's like, "Are you doing this, or am I doing this?"
Yes.
And so he just reminds me that this is, I am, for me to walk on my purpose, which he has given me, I need to
Yeah.
rely on him, because he gave it to me. And it's not for me, it's to serve others.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I forget that, that's when I have the tendency to fail or screw up. And then he reminds me, and I get back on track. Yes.
That's a good point because, when we're steering the bus, it's going to be a crash.
It's go-
It's like when we get on it as a passenger and we give up control because
yes.
we all, even as entrepreneurs, you're blazing the trail, and yet there's a fine line with trusting God with your life, and
Hmm.
you being the action person. What
Yes.
would you say? How to balancing those two things? Because I see it in travels, like maybe not. I see it more with guys. I mean, I don't know
Hmm.
if it's true. Like plow through it. I can do it.
Yes.
So give our viewers, like, how do you balance taking action and doing things and letting God lead your path?
Well, first and foremost, prayer, right? And asking for discernment.
Mm,
So, like, hey, God, because I'll have a conversation with myself and it will sound good, but I need you to help me when it comes to discernment. And
yeah.
something that I mentioned to fail that has been a huge part of this journey is community. So, having and asking God and trusting that He will put along this journey the individuals that need to come along. Like He's planting people on that journey
Yes.
specifically to um, help you walk through this journey. And so, praying for the discernment not only in what you're doing, but
Hmm.
in recognizing those people that He's planting, this community that He's building around you as you're walking on this
Yes.
journey. It is so important because, as I mentioned before, I have kids, and for me to be able to be present for them, with them in the moment, it means that I'm going to have to rely on my community. I'm going to have to rely on my village to help me, because I won't be able to do it all.
Yeah.
And that was probably something that I learned the hard way. One of my lessons is
Yeah.
me trying to take on everything because I'm a superwoman and I must prove it to the world. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, no.
Yeah. Did you come this past Thursday to Rotary?
No, I did not,
Okay.
because
Ed Seltzer spoke, and he has 4 kids, and so his youngest he's taken her to college
Mhm.
that morning. And so he said something that really kind of stop you in your tracks. We think we have an infinite number of time
Yeah.
with our kids. But
Mhm.
I don't know the exact number, but I want to say it was 200 some Saturdays that
Oh
we
my
had
gosh, that's it.
between when we're born and 18. And so what he was saying is like, don't be present. They
Yes,
grow up fast.
they
And all of
do.
a sudden he's an empty nester. He's taking
Yeah.
his youngest to college and he's like, everybody's saying, "Hey, that's a good time." He says, "Man, it was tearing him up
It
because
what it is.
that number of Saturdays is now finished. You can't
Exactly.
change."
That's
So
it.
having what you just said, being present with your kids, having that lifestyle where you can sit down with mom and talk it through and be present. Don't be so busy being busy and
Mhm.
miss those years that they're growing up.
Yeah.
How do they see you as a podcaster now? What kind of questions are they asking you? What
You know, my kids they're so amazing. One thing that I wanted to make sure happened was that as I was actually going through the process of creating the podcast and the branding and all that stuff, I wanted to make sure that they were involved in that process.
Mhm.
Because just because I'm the one in front of the camera, just because I'm the one
Yeah.
podcasting, but I actually need them. I need them to know what I'm doing. I need them to be quiet on the set because they know I'm on a podcast. So this involves all of us. It takes all of us for me to do this. And they were involved when I was like deciding what the brand was going to look like. They were involved when I had people coming here and recording. Last season, I kind of kicked them out of the house for 2 days while we recorded multiple episodes.
Mhm.
And so they had to go hang out with their friends. And they'll come back and they'll be like, okay, so how was today? How did it go? They're always asking,
Mhm.
checking in on me. And they're just so supportive on this journey, and I'm thankful for them because there are times where I could be more present, and they're just one of them. He will tell me, he will call me out on my stuff. He will be like, "Mom, um, I've had 3 games so far, and you've only been at one. What is happening?" Like he will call me out, and I appreciate that because I'm like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
okay," and I'll straighten up. But I love that we have that relationship and they're able to call
Yeah.
me out on my stuff. But I know that they're also my biggest cheerleaders. So I'm so fortunate.
So I want you to tell people how can they get a hold of you?
Yes. So there's several different ways. Definitely through the number that you see on the screen. That is my phone number. I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn as well, and
Mhm.
Facebook. Instagram, I'm very active. If I had to pick one social media, that's probably where people see me the most is on
Okay.
Instagram.
Okay.
And there are reels, there are preview reels on the podcast. It's all podcasts on there.
Mhm.
And my handle is inside the bubble, all one word, the
Okay.
letter HG. So all one word, inside the bubble HG on Instagram. And then on LinkedIn, I am Harli G. So you can
Okay.
find me on there as well. I pretty much keep up with this. There's a lot of stuff to keep up on. So I just pick up the lanes that I want to live in and I just
Yeah.
kind of I stay there. But that's how people
Well,
can
that
reach me.
that is awesome. Well, I want to encourage our viewers, share this with people you think can benefit by being connected to Harley. So if you have some people out there, especially, I love the idea women in business, as we talked a few minutes before. So, if you know a person that's struggling with getting in business, struggling with a purpose, share this with them. Because being inspired by people that are doing it helps us get the courage to go out
Yes.
there and do things. Just like you said, Oprah and uh,
Tyler Perry.
Tyler Perry. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was at the airport and I was showing a friend of a friend And the guy goes, "Hey, we have Tyler Perry parking his jet here." He goes, "You see that one right there?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, we had to cut out a hole to fit the tail of the plane because it was bigger than they had."
Oh wow.
So right around the corner, maybe I shouldn't say,
Everybody's gonna go to the airport now.
"Oh, and see his jet." Yeah. Oh no, it's inspiration to see people succeed in every different ways, and motivation and getting inspired by people is so important. So, what would you say? What would be the one thing you want our viewers to take home from our time on the podcast?
I would say if that question of purpose keeps popping up for you, then it's time for you to take action.
Hmm.
I challenge you to take action. You know that something is missing. You might have it all, as far as like you have the nice job, you have the perfect house, you have the kids, you know, you're living your best life, but for some reason there's a little voice that's still saying there's something missing. Then where are you when it comes to your purpose?
Yes.
So if you cannot answer that question, give me a call because
Awesome.
I would love to walk with you, support you on this journey to purpose.
Mhm. Well, Harley, thank you so much for coming on this Friday afternoon. There's a lot of things we can do on a Friday afternoon. And a lot of us were kicking into the weekend, but you're
Yes,
here with us sharing,
yes.
your journey, your story, and I want to thank you for being a guest.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Absolutely, it's been a joy.